Pregnant wife goes into labor alone. Wealthy millionaire chooses mistress over her. The hush of the hospital corridor was broken by the sharp echo of rubber soles against polished linoleum. Sofia Delgado, her belly round with new life, clutched the metal railing, gasping for breath as contraction after contraction knifed through her body. She glanced desperately toward the automatic doors, hoping that her husband, millionaire entrepreneur Jonathan Delgado, would appear to whisk her to safety, to hold her hand like he'd promised. But somewhere else in the same hospital, Jonathan was making a different choice: to stand by his glamorous mistress's side. Little did Sofia know, her entire reality was about to unravel with heart-shattering betrayal. Sofia Delgado leaned her head against the cold glass window of her bedroom, gazing out at the lights of the bustling city of Caracas. Nighttime in Venezuela could be as vibrant as the day, with lively music drifting up from the streets below. But tonight, all Sofia felt was an empty silence that pressed in on her from every corner. She gently cradled her pregnant belly, feeling the faint kicks of the life inside her. Each movement reminded her of the commitments she and Jonathan had made: promises for a bright future, shared successes, a happy home, and unconditional support. In the sprawling penthouse she and Jonathan called home, the sleek marble floors and luxurious furnishings now felt like a prison of pristine opulence. The hush that hovered over the place was unnerving. Jonathan had left that morning, claiming he had an urgent business meeting. By now, it was nearing midnight, and he still hadn't returned. Sofia had tried to brush off the simmering anxiety in her heart. Jonathan was often busy. He was a millionaire entrepreneur who thrived on making deals and forging alliances with powerful corporate partners. That was the nature of his life. He had insisted, and she had tried to accept it, at least in the early days of their marriage. But the doubts Sofia had been pushing away for months were no longer silent. She remembered the expensive perfume lingering on Jonathan's suit jacket. A few days ago, a scent that was definitely not hers. Tonight, she felt an odd ache in her chest, an intuition that something was terribly wrong. When Jonathan finally came home at nearly 3 in the morning, Sofia wasn't asleep. She had curled up on the living room sofa with a blanket around her shoulders, attempting to watch an old telenovela to distract herself. But the second the door opened, her eyes snapped to Jonathan's face. He was a tall, commanding man whose presence usually filled a room with confidence. His black hair was always neatly styled, and his tailored suits exuded luxury. But that evening, or rather, early morning, he looked different. His tie was crooked, the top button of his shirt undone. His eyes carried guilt beneath a veneer of exhaustion. Sofia tried to greet him calmly, her voice trembling slightly as she asked, "Busy day at the office?" The question was a veil for everything she truly wanted to ask. "Why do I smell unfamiliar perfume on you? Why are you lying to me? Where have you been this late?" Jonathan brushed her off with a dismissive wave of his hand. Yes, there was a crisis with the new real estate partnership. Meetings dragged on. His explanation did nothing to ease her tension. Sofia felt the baby shift inside her, a reminder that time was running short before her due date. She tried to decide whether to confront him right then and there, or to keep playing the dutiful wife. For months, she had tried to keep the peace, hoping things would revert to what they once were. But that night, as she looked at Jonathan's averted gaze, the fragile illusion she'd been clinging to began to crumble. Sofia's suspicion had been planted a while back, watered by small but telling signs. Business trips that sprang up out of nowhere, late nights at the office that extended into the weekend, expenses on their joint credit card from high-end boutiques she had never set foot in. All of it could have had innocent explanations, but her gut told her otherwise. The day after Jonathan's late return, Sofia stood in the luxurious penthouse kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast of arepas and black coffee. The smell of freshly ground coffee beans usually brought her comfort, a warm childhood memory of her grandmother's kitchen. But this morning she could barely taste a thing. Across the marble island, Jonathan scrolled through messages on his phone, his brow furrowed in deep concentration, or maybe it was something else, anxiety. She had a fleeting thought that he was texting someone he shouldn't be, perhaps another woman. But she swallowed her questions, fearful of the answers. He barely ate anything before heading out again, claiming a meeting. She noticed he left the penthouse in a hurry, almost as though he couldn't stand to be in the same room with her for too long. Sophia placed a hand on her belly, exhaling a shaky breath. She had to think of the baby first, above all else. She silently told herself that she had to remain calm, to gather more information before she jumped to conclusions. Deep down, though, she felt it. Change was on the horizon. It was Sophia's friend, Lisette, who revealed a crucial piece of the puzzle. Lisette worked in public relations for an event management company and was known for her keen eye for detail, not to mention her wide network of contacts around the city. They sat at a cafe one sunny afternoon, where Lisette handed Sophia a glossy magazine spread featuring a high society gala from the previous week. In the center of one photo stood Jonathan, dressed in a black tuxedo, his arm around a striking, raven-haired beauty named Alicia Moretti. The article described Alicia as a socialite and philanthropist, with an inheritance rumored to be in the millions. In the picture, Alicia's hand rested possessively on Jonathan's shoulder, her eyes shining as though she owned the world, and maybe the man beside her too. Sophia felt her stomach twist. The knot of suspicion she'd been wrestling with grew tighter. She read the caption, "Millionaire property tycoon Jonathan Delgado and his close confidant, Alicia Moretti, at the SE Foundation Gala." The word close practically screamed at her. She felt the baby kick again, a frantic flutter against her ribs, as if the unborn child sensed Sophia's mounting distress. Lisette watched her friend with sympathy. "Sophia, I don't know what to say. I saw this and wanted to make sure you knew. The rumors around the city, they're getting louder." Sophia wanted to deny it all, to cling to the idea that her husband was a decent man who wouldn't betray her, especially not when she was so far along in her pregnancy. But as she stared at the photograph, she could no longer deny the truth that hovered like a storm cloud. Jonathan Delgado might be in love with another woman. That evening, armed with a magazine and a heavy heart, Sophia decided to confront Jonathan directly. She waited until he returned from yet another meeting, which now felt like a flimsy disguise for his escapades. He walked into the penthouse, loosening his tie, and froze when he saw the magazine on the kitchen counter, opened to the damning photograph. Sophia stood on the other side, her eyes red from tears she refused to let fall in his presence. "What is this?" she demanded, voice trembling. "Who is Alicia Moretti to you, Jonathan?" He set his jaw and exhaled. Slowly, "She's a business associate, Sophia. She's investing in one of my construction projects. You know I attend social events to network." Sophia slammed her palm on the countertop, tears welling up despite her effort to control them. "Don't lie to me. Do you expect me to believe you pose like that with every business associate? Everyone is talking about it." An icy silence settled, broken only by the hum of the penthouse's climate control system. Jonathan's gaze hardened. "I don't owe you an explanation for every rumor. I've told you the truth. If you don't trust me, that's on you." In that moment, Sophia realized how far they had drifted. The man who once serenaded her with love songs, who knelt down on one knee to propose, now wore a mask of indifference. And she, pregnant, vulnerable, and desperate for answers, found only denial in his eyes. Desperate for proof and for a sliver of sanity, Sophia decided to hire a private investigator named Victor Gutierrez. He came highly recommended by one of Lisette's acquaintances. Victor was a quiet man with a piercing gaze, someone who had worked cases from corporate espionage to marital indiscretions. His calm demeanor put Sophia at ease, even as she handed him a folder containing photos, schedules, and addresses. "I need to know for certain," she told him, her voice shaky but resolute. "I can't bring my baby into a home built on lies." Victor nodded. "I understand, Mrs. Delgado. I'll keep you informed." Days turned into a week, and Sophia tried to maintain her composure. She attended her prenatal checkups alone, smiling politely at the nurses, though her mind was a tangled mess of worry. Each night, she slept fitfully, waking to find Jonathan's side of the bed cold and empty. Even if he came home at all, he slipped in after midnight. Then, one afternoon, Victor's call came in. "I have some developments," he said gently. "I'd like to meet you in person." Sophia felt her heart thunder in her chest. She arranged to meet at a discreet coffee shop, a place where Jonathan would never think to look for her. As she drove there, her pregnant belly pressed uncomfortably against the steering wheel. Her palms were slick with sweat. She couldn't help but think, today I'll learn the truth. But am I truly ready for it? Sophia sat opposite Victor in a dimly lit corner of the cafe, the scent of roasted coffee beans thick in the air. He slid a manila envelope across the table, his expression a solemn mix of professional composure and sympathy. She opened it with trembling fingers, revealing photographs and typed notes. The pictures showed Jonathan and Alicia together at various high-end spots, a private yacht party, an upscale restaurant, and even at a weekend resort. In one particularly incriminating shot, Jonathan leaned in to kiss Alicia in a garden gazebo, her arms wrapped around his neck. The timestamp revealed it was only a few days ago. Her stomach churned. She felt the baby shift, as if sensing her distress. She tore her gaze away, pressing her lips together to keep from breaking down in front of a complete stranger. Victor cleared his throat gently. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Delgado. I've seen a lot of these cases. Sometimes the spouses reconcile, but from the looks of it..." He trailed off delicately. "It appears they're quite involved." He's been spending nights at her apartment in the Valariba district. Sophia nodded, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. Her mind was a blur of heartbreak and rage, but also a flicker of relief that she finally had proof, no more second-guessing herself or ignoring the signs. She quietly thanked Victor for his work and left the cafe, the envelope clutched against her chest. Little did she know, the darkest tests of her love and endurance were yet to come. On the drive back home, Sophia's thoughts drifted to the early days of her relationship with Jonathan. They had met by chance at a charity function she attended with her cousin, Paula. Jonathan was still an up-and-coming real estate developer back then, charming and full of dreams. They danced to a slow bolero that night, and he confessed that he'd never believed in love at first sight until he laid eyes on her. Those memories felt like warm sunlight shining on a very different version of Jonathan, a man who once called her his angel. She recalled how he would surprise her with hand-picked flowers, how he'd take off entire afternoons just to accompany her to the beach. And when they decided to get married, Jonathan promised her a lifetime of devotion. Their wedding was a modest affair, but bursting with genuine love. Now, as she glanced at the vile evidence of his betrayal, she wondered where that man had gone. Was he ever real? Or had Jonathan's ambition grown so large that it left no room for his heart? By the time she reached their penthouse, her eyes were nearly dry, the tears replaced by a cold determination. A new life was about to enter this world, and Sophia refused to be a doormat. She resolved to confront Jonathan again, not with accusations, but with indisputable facts. One way or another, she would force him to reveal his true intentions and decide if there was any salvaging their fractured marriage. Sophia waited until Jonathan came home around midnight again. She stayed in the living room, arms folded tightly across her chest, the envelope from Victor resting conspicuously on the coffee table. The lights were dimmed, casting long shadows across the gleaming floor. When Jonathan walked in, he spotted the envelope instantly, his eyes flickering with apprehension. Before he could say a word, Sophia spoke with surprising calm. "Sit down. We need to talk." He obeyed, albeit reluctantly, and lowered himself into the leather armchair opposite her. Sophia pushed the envelope toward him. "Open it." Jonathan hesitated for a moment, then slid out the photos. She watched his face, searching for any sign of regret or remorse. Initially his expression hardened, then his hands tensed around the pictures. Her heart pounded, but she refused to break eye contact. "You hired a private investigator?" he asked, voice taut with anger. "Yes, because I needed to know the truth," Sophia said. "Now I have it. I see you with her, Alicia Moretti. I see you kissing her. I see you leaving her apartment in the middle of the night. Is there anything left to say, Jonathan?" He tossed the photos onto the table, frustration crossing his features. "Sophia, it's complicated. I never wanted you to find out this way." Pain flared in her chest. "The baby and I deserve more than your secrets. You have two choices. End this affair and commit to this family, or leave. But I won't tolerate a husband who can't be faithful." Sophia's ultimatum hung in the air like an electric storm. Jonathan rose from his seat, running a hand through his hair. He began to pace the living room, stepping over the plush rug with restless strides. His silence was worse than any shouting match. It felt as though time itself had paused, waiting for him to respond. Eventually he spoke, his voice strained. "Sophia, I never planned to hurt you, but Alicia, she has connections, resources that are beneficial to my business. It started out as something purely professional, I promise. I needed her investments to expand our real estate empire. She wanted more, and I got swept up." Sophia felt her anger flare. "So you were willing to sell your integrity for money, and now you stand here telling me it was just business, when you're obviously entwined with her." He stared at the floor, his face contorted with a blend of guilt and something else, perhaps shame. "I don't expect you to understand. I'm building an international name for our company. If I can secure Alicia's backing, we'll be unstoppable. I never meant for it to become a full-blown affair. But Alicia is insistent, demanding more than just business. She's threatened to pull her funding if I don't comply." The words sounded hollow to Sophia. She shook her head, tears burning her eyes again. "And what about me, your wife, your unborn child? Where do we fit into your priorities?" Jonathan sighed heavily. "I'm trying to keep everything from falling apart. But I'm not sure I can fix this, Sophia." The weeks that followed were a tumultuous blur. Sophia tried to focus on preparing for the baby, buying tiny clothes and setting up a nursery. Still, every time she heard Jonathan's key in the door, her stomach twisted with anxiety. Their conversations had dwindled to coldly polite exchanges about finances or the pregnancy. He slept in the guest bedroom or didn't come home at all. During her next prenatal checkup, Dr. Valdez frowned at Sophia's elevated blood pressure. The older woman gave Sophia's hand a gentle squeeze. "My dear, you need to reduce your stress levels. This isn't good for you or the baby." Sophia forced a smile. "I'll try. There's just a lot going on right now." Dr. Valdez must have sensed the tension. "You're nearing your due date. Is your support system in place? It's important to have someone with you at the hospital." Sophia felt her heart twist painfully. She hadn't even considered the possibility that Jonathan might not be there. "Yes," she lied, nodding as convincingly as she could. "My husband will be there." But in her mind, she pictured Jonathan's phone lighting up with Alicia's name. She imagined the call that would inevitably lead him away from her side. The thought of going into labor alone terrified her, yet she was also torn by a fierce resolve she could and would survive, even if Jonathan chose someone else in her most vulnerable moment. One late afternoon, Sophia was in the nursery folding baby clothes when Jonathan unexpectedly knocked on the door. He stepped inside, looking around at the pastel-colored walls decorated with cartoon elephants. Soft sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a gentle glow that made the space feel warm and welcoming. He cleared his throat. "How's everything coming along?" Sophia, unsettled by his uncharacteristic display of interest, answered quietly, "It's almost ready. Just a few more things, and we'll be set." Jonathan nodded, stepping closer to the white crib in the corner. He ran a hand along its edge. For a moment, he looked genuinely remorseful, like the man she married. "I know I haven't been present," he started, his voice thick with emotion. "And I know you're angry and hurt. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Truly. I never wanted to push you away." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. She felt a spark of hope flicker inside her, then stop. "Leave Alicia, if it's not too late. We can figure out our marriage, but only if you choose this family first." He hesitated, and the spark began to dim. "Sophia, I just need a little more time to handle some things. I promise I'll fix this. Just trust me a bit longer." She wanted to ask how much longer, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she silently prayed that Jonathan meant what he said. Little did she know, his next actions would betray whatever ounce of trust she had left. 3 days later, Sophia found herself alone in the penthouse again. She could barely sleep anymore, plagued by late-night heartburn and insomnia, brought on by her advanced pregnancy and her emotional turmoil. Jonathan was out, apparently attending a networking dinner. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. It was Lisette, sending her an image from a social media story. The photo showed Jonathan and Alicia at an exclusive nightclub, dancing close. Jonathan's hand rested intimately on Alicia's waist, their faces too near for comfort. The timestamp was just minutes ago. Sophia's chest constricted, and she felt a surge of dizziness. She immediately dialed Jonathan's number. No answer. She texted him, "I see you with Alicia." "You said you were at a networking dinner. You lied again." The message showed delivered, but no reply came. For nearly an hour, she paced the living room, fury and heartbreak colliding in her mind. If Jonathan was so committed to fixing things, why was he with Alicia at a nightclub, lying about his whereabouts? Eventually, she sank onto the sofa, the stress overwhelming. A part of her wished she could wipe away her tears and walk out the door, never to return. But she was so close to giving birth, her life entwined with Jonathan's wealth and resources. Leaving meant stepping into the unknown, financially and emotionally. Trembling with grief and frustration, she vowed that if he couldn't be there for her, when it mattered, she would have to stand on her own, even if it meant facing labor alone. In the middle of a sweltering afternoon, as the summer sun blazed over Caracas, Sophia's water broke. She had been resting in the bedroom, reading a parenting book to distract herself from the emotional storm in her life. A sudden, sharp pain coursed through her abdomen, followed by a warm gush of fluid. The reality of childbirth slammed into her with unforgiving force. Heart pounding, she realized she was alone. Jonathan had left early for yet another important meeting. Every attempt to contact him led to voicemail. Fear gripped her. She was about to bring a new life into the world, and the one person who was supposed to stand by her side was nowhere to be found. Gasping through a contraction, Sophia managed to dial Lisette. "I think the baby's coming," she breathed, pain evident in her voice. "Jonathan's not answering. Can you help me?" Lisette's response came swiftly. "Hang in there, sweetie. I'm calling a taxi right now. I'll be there as fast as I can, and we'll get you to the hospital." Relief washed over Sophia at having at least one loyal friend. She grabbed her hospital bag, a pre-packed suitcase that had been sitting by the door for weeks, and tried to steady her breathing. Contractions came in waves, each one more intense than the last. As she made her way to the living room, she prayed with all her might that Jonathan would come to his senses in time, that he wouldn't truly abandon her when she needed him the most. By the time Lisette arrived, Sophia was doubled over in agony, her face pale and dripping with sweat. They hurried downstairs and into the waiting taxi, the driver rushing to the hospital under Lisette's frantic instructions. The city traffic was congested, but with the driver weaving through side streets, they arrived at the hospital in record time. Nurses in pastel scrubs swiftly guided Sophia into a wheelchair and took her to the maternity ward. Lisette checked her in at the front desk, explaining that the patient's husband would be along soon. Time blurred into a haze of paperwork, bright fluorescent lights, and the sharp tang of disinfectant. Sophia could barely focus on anything beyond the relentless pain in her abdomen. Nurses strapped a fetal monitor to her belly to check the baby's heartbeat. A young, kindly resident named Dr. Romero introduced himself and asked about her primary support person for the delivery. "My husband. He's on his way," Sophia managed between contractions, though she couldn't be sure it was true. Lisette hovered close, holding Sophia's hand and whispering words of encouragement. With each contraction, Sophia cried out, tears of both pain and heartbreak streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't believe she was doing this alone, in a hospital room that felt cold and isolating despite the flurry of medical staff. She felt the baby's movement, a fierce twist inside her that matched her own emotional turmoil. More than ever, she silently begged Jonathan to appear at the door before it was too late. Unbeknownst to Sophia, Jonathan was indeed at the hospital, but not for her. He had been summoned by Alicia Moretti, who had collapsed from acute pain during a business luncheon. When Jonathan received her call, all he heard was her frantic voice. "Help me, I'm at the hospital. They think it's appendicitis or something worse." "Jonathan, please come." Panic swelled within him. Despite everything, Jonathan felt responsible for Alicia. She had become more than just a financial backer. She was a fixture in his life, a mistress. He claimed he couldn't escape because of business and personal entanglements. Without thinking twice, he sped to the hospital, fully intending to check on Alicia and then see Sophia. But as fate would have it, Alicia's condition seemed dire when he arrived. A swarm of doctors and nurses whisked her into an examination room. Jonathan anxiously followed, ignoring the odd stares from staff who recognized him from tabloids. Finally, a doctor emerged to explain that Alicia had suffered a severe infection that could require immediate surgery. Jonathan's head spun. His phone vibrated, constantly missed calls and text messages from Lisette, and even from the hospital's front desk, trying to inform him that his wife was in labor. But in the commotion, he brushed off the notifications, assuming they could wait a few minutes. After all, he thought, labor can take hours. He would tend to Alicia, ensure she was stable, and then find Sophia. He had no idea that each minute he spent with Alicia was another minute. Sophia was forced to endure her labor alone. Back in Sophia's room, the pains were coming faster now. Sweat trickled down her temple as she clutched Lisette's hand with white-knuckled intensity. Her breathing was ragged, eyes wild with a mixture of fear and unrelenting discomfort. Dr. Romero checked her dilation and gave her an encouraging nod. "You're about 8 centimeters, Mrs. Delgado. We're almost there. Keep breathing." Sophia forced herself to inhale sharply, then exhale through pursed lips as Lisette counted for her. Another wave of pain tore through her abdomen. The monitors beeped steadily, each beep a reminder that time was moving forward, whether Jonathan appeared or not. Lisette, her phone pressed to her ear, tried once more to contact Jonathan. "He's still not answering," she whispered to Sophia, her voice tinged with frustration. "I'm leaving messages everywhere I can think of." Sophia's tears flowed anew. The heartbreak of Jonathan's betrayal mingled with the immediate terror of impending childbirth. She felt vulnerable and utterly alone in the most critical moment of her life. "Why isn't he here?" she gasped. The question echoed through her mind, stabbing at her like a cruel joke. Trembling, she tried to hold herself together. She had no idea that Jonathan was somewhere in the same building, completely absorbed with another woman's emergency. In that moment, Sophia's love, trust, and even hatred fused into one overwhelming sorrow, leaving her with only one option: to fight for herself and her baby. Lisette refused to leave Sophia's side. She held cold compresses to Sophia's forehead, wiped her tears, and offered gentle words of reassurance that everything would be okay. Although Lisette was not family, in that moment she became the emotional anchor Sophia so desperately needed. "I'm not going anywhere," Lisette whispered, her voice steady. "We're bringing this baby into the world together." Sophia nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Another contraction hit, and she squeezed Lisette's hand, muffling a scream into the pillow. Time seemed to slow. The walls of the hospital room closed in around her, each beep of the machine echoing in her ears. Meanwhile, Dr. Romero and a team of nurses prepared for the final stage of labor. Medical jargon fluttered around the room, sterile instruments clicked on metal trays, and the harsh overhead light felt like it was spotlighting Sophia's raw vulnerability. Despite the chaos, Lisette's presence was a lifeline. Just then, Sophia heard a chime from Lisette's phone. Her friend's eyes flicked to the screen, and a tight grimace overtook her face. "It's from the front desk," she explained hastily. "Jonathan is in the hospital. He's with Alicia Moretti, who's apparently having some kind of emergency." A sob tore from Sophia's throat. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. She locked eyes with Lisette, heartbreak etched into every line of her face. "He's here, but not for me?" Lisette shook her head, her own voice trembling with fury. "I'm so sorry, Sophia." Despite the emotional upheaval, Sophia's body pressed onward in the relentless drive of childbirth. Within the next hour, Dr. Romero announced that she was fully dilated and ready to push. A wave of adrenaline coursed through Sophia as the medical team shifted into high gear. "Push with the next contraction," Dr. Romero instructed. "Give it everything you've got." Sophia clenched her teeth, closed her eyes, and bore down. She felt like her body was ripping apart from the inside. Pain, fear, heartbreak, they all melded into one white-hot sensation of survival. Lisette stood at her bedside, stroking her hair and urging her on. Another push, and another. Time lost meaning. Sophia could barely register her surroundings beyond the instruction to push. She wasn't even aware of the tears streaming down her cheeks or the tremble in her legs. All that mattered was delivering her child safely. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a piercing cry shattered the tension in the room. Sophia gasped, her chest heaving. Dr. Romero held up a tiny, squirming, wrinkled baby, a miracle of life in a swirl of pain and sorrow. "It's a boy!" exclaimed Dr. Romero, a warm smile lifting his face. Sophia's eyes brimmed with tears as the nurses cut the cord and swiftly cleaned the infant. They placed him on her chest. In that single moment, a tidal wave of love surged through her, overpowering every lingering hurt. She held her baby boy against her heart, whispering, "You're not alone. Mama's here." Minutes after the baby's arrival, the door to Sophia's room swung open with a bang. Jonathan burst inside, his face flustered and his shirt collar stained with what looked like coffee. "Sophia, are you okay?" he exclaimed, eyes darting from her tear-streaked face to the tiny bundle in her arms. Instinctively, Lisette stepped between him and Sophia. "You've got some nerve," she hissed, anger radiating from every syllable. Ignoring Lisette, Jonathan took a cautious step closer. I was dealing with an emergency. Alicia needed surgery, and Sophia's voice cracked like thunder. I was in labor, Jonathan. Our baby was being born. She clutched the newborn protectively, her body still aching and drenched in sweat. And you were off with her. His gaze dropped to the floor. Sophia, I'm sorry, he started, but even he seemed to realize how hollow the words sounded. He approached the bed, reaching out tentatively. I didn't know it would happen so fast. Sophia's eyes blazed with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Even if it took all night, you were still with Alicia. You're always with her. He froze, guilt carving deep furrows into his brow. The baby stirred, letting out a faint whimper as if sensing the tension. Sophia pulled her son close, her tears landing on his soft blanket. In that moment, the man she had vowed to love, for better or for worse, felt like a stranger, the betrayal too fresh and raw to comprehend. Sophia spent the next 2 days in the hospital, recovering from the physical toll of childbirth. Emotionally, she was a wreck. Jonathan visited, albeit sporadically, torn between checking on Alicia's post-surgery condition and trying to mend things with his wife. Each time he entered Sophia's room, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Lisette remained a steadfast presence, helping Sophia with the newborn whom Sophia named Matteo. She had chosen the name months ago for its meaning, gift of God. Indeed, her son felt like the only bright spot in a sea of sorrow. On the second evening, as Sophia gently rocked Matteo to sleep, Jonathan walked in carrying a bouquet of roses. Sophia, she held up a hand, silencing him. I'm not interested in apologies right now. I need solutions. He set the flowers on the windowsill, swallowing hard. Look, I know I messed up. I was torn between 2 urgent situations. Alicia needed immediate surgery, and Sophia's gaze could have frozen lava. You should have never been in that situation to begin with, she hissed. I was alone in labor, Jonathan. Alone. I can't even look at you without feeling sick. Don't you get that? He started to say something, then closed his mouth. The silence was deafening, filled with unspoken accusations and regrets. Finally, Jonathan mumbled, I'll give you space, and turned to leave. Sophia stared at the door for a long time after he was gone, her heart aching with every beat. Once Sophia was discharged, returning to the penthouse felt surreal. The same lavish space that once symbolized their shared dreams now felt suffocating. She set Matteo's car seat down in the living room, gazing around at the polished floors and glittering chandeliers with a sense of detachment. Nothing had changed in the decor, yet everything was different. Jonathan hovered by the door, unsure if he should help or leave. I've had the staff prepare the nursery, he said awkwardly. Sophia gently lifted Matteo into her arms. We'll be in the nursery then, she replied, coldly, walking away without another word. Lisette had offered to stay for a few days, but Sophia insisted she would manage. Despite the turmoil, she felt a need to figure things out on her own. That night, as Sophia nursed Matteo in the quiet sanctuary of the nursery, she mulled over her options. Divorcing Jonathan loomed as a distinct possibility, yet so did the terror of raising a child alone. And what about Jonathan's fortune, his business empire? A high-profile divorce would be messy, potentially harming not just Jonathan's reputation, but also Alicia's involvement, not to mention the future financial security of her son. She gazed down at Matteo's tiny features, a wave of love and protectiveness overwhelming her. With a tearful sigh, she acknowledged that no decision could be made lightly. But one thing was certain: she refused to let her son become a casualty of Jonathan's affair. A week after Sophia's return home, an unexpected message arrived for Jonathan, this time from Alicia herself. The note was delivered by a courier, sealed in an elegant envelope bearing the Moretti family crest. Jonathan opened it in his study, away from Sophia's eyes, though she noticed his tense posture as he read. In the letter, Alicia stated that she required Jonathan's unwavering commitment, both personally and in their business dealings. She felt wronged that he had not spent enough time by her bedside post-surgery and that he was now preoccupied with his wife and newborn. If Jonathan wanted her continued financial backing, he would have to prove his loyalty, implying that time spent with Sophia was a betrayal. Jonathan stared at Alicia's words with a mixture of indignation and trapped desperation. He had been trying to salvage some semblance of peace at home, but Alicia's demands were relentless. In her mind, Jonathan belonged to her now, an asset she had paid for with generous investments. That evening, Jonathan paced the penthouse study, the letter clenched in his fist. He was torn between two worlds, one that held his son and a marriage now hanging by a thread, and the other that offered boundless business growth, but at the cost of moral compromise. He had once believed he could juggle both, but Alicia's ultimatum forced him to admit the precariousness of his position. He had to choose, and he had to do it soon. As the days wore on, Sophia recovered her strength physically, but emotionally, she still felt bruised and hollow. Late one evening, after putting Matteo to sleep, she found Jonathan sitting alone in the living room, nursing a tumbler of whiskey. The tension in the air was palpable. "I can't live like this," Sophia said, her voice quavering. "I won't be in a marriage with 3 people. Jonathan's shoulders sagged. He set the glass down, rubbing his temple. "Alicia is threatening to withdraw all her investments. If she does, I stand to lose millions. Possibly more if she retaliates by spreading damaging rumors or filing lawsuits." A bitter laugh escaped Sophia's lips. "And that's worth more to you than our family?" "No," he said vehemently, though his eyes betrayed uncertainty. "But there's more at stake than you realize. Contracts, foreign investors, an entire empire is riding on Alicia's involvement. I'm trying to keep everyone afloat," Sophia bristled. "Well, I'm done drowning. You have a child, Jonathan. You have a wife. I'm giving you one last chance, cut Alicia out of our lives. If you can't, then I'll file for divorce and take Matteo somewhere safe." He stared at her, stunned by her conviction. For a long moment, neither spoke. Sophia held her breath, her heart hammering in her chest. She realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Her maternal instincts had eclipsed her fear. She would do whatever was necessary to protect her son, with or without Jonathan Delgado. The day after Sophia issued her ultimatum, Jonathan arranged a private meeting with Alicia at an upscale hotel lounge. He needed to end it, or so he told himself. Draped in a sleek black dress that accentuated her imposing presence, Alicia welcomed him with a cold, knowing smile. "You're late," she said, taking a sip of champagne. "I assume you've come to give me good news." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "We need to talk." For the next hour, their conversation escalated into a fierce argument. Alicia refused to accept a breakup. Jonathan insisted he had no choice. She threatened to pull out of his projects and even insinuated she might sue him for breach of verbal agreements. Jonathan retorted that he would bring his own lawyers, but there was no denying Alicia's power. Her father was a political heavyweight with international reach. While Jonathan battled with Alicia at the hotel, Sophia waited at home, each tick of the clock intensifying her anxiety. She knew Jonathan was meeting Alicia, but not how it would conclude. Was he truly ending things, or would he succumb to greed again and betray their family once more? Finally, Jonathan returned late into the evening. His tie was undone, and exhaustion clouded his features. He walked into the nursery where Sophia rocked Matteo, a haunted look in his eyes. "I did it," he said quietly, sinking into a nearby chair. "I ended it with Alicia. It cost me nearly everything financially. She's threatening legal action, claiming she has enough evidence to destroy my reputation." He swallowed hard. "But I'm done. I choose you and Matteo if you'll still have me." Sophia held her son close, tears slipping down her cheeks. She whispered, "Only time will tell, Jonathan. The weeks that followed were tumultuous, marked by a swirl of legal threats from Alicia Moretti. Her lawyers bombarded Jonathan's company with letters, accusing him of reneging on verbal agreements for high-stake investments. The business press speculated about trouble in the Delgado empire, with tabloids gleefully highlighting the love triangle's messy fallout. Jonathan spent hours in meetings with his legal team, trying to mitigate the damage. Ironically, he had once boasted about his unstoppable ambition, but now he found himself fighting to keep his enterprise afloat. He rarely came home before midnight, though this time it was genuinely about damage control rather than deception. Meanwhile, Sophia focused on Matteo. She poured her love and energy into caring for her newborn, cherishing each coo and cry. Slowly, her anger toward Jonathan began to thaw, replaced by a cautious sense of hope. It helped that Jonathan was making an effort. He came home when he could, joined her for pediatric appointments, and stayed up late helping with feedings, even when he looked drained from his legal battles. Their conversations were subdued but more honest than before. Jonathan apologized repeatedly, admitting that he had let greed and ambition overshadow his morals. Though Sophia wasn't ready to forgive fully, she saw glimpses of the man she once loved. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rumbled outside, Jonathan quietly approached Sophia. She was in the living room, rocking Matteo to sleep. "I've scheduled counseling sessions for us," he said, softly, voice trembling with uncertainty. "If you want to go, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this." Sophia locked eyes with him, searching for sincerity. Finally she nodded. "I'll go, for Matteo's sake and maybe for ours." Therapy was an emotional minefield. Every week, Jonathan and Sophia sat in Dr. Espinosa's office, a cozy room lined with bookshelves and calming artwork. They spoke about betrayal, resentment, and shattered trust. Each session was both draining and cathartic. Dr. Espinosa guided them through open communication exercises, encouraging Jonathan to own his mistakes and Sophia to express her fears and anger without shame. Some days, Sophia left sessions feeling hopeful, like their marriage might survive after all. Other days, she felt so hollow that she questioned why she bothered. Still, she remembered that final image of giving birth alone, the heartbreak slicing through her. She vowed never to be so vulnerable again without the protection of honest partnership. Throughout this process, Matteo served as their anchor. Every time Jonathan felt tempted to quit therapy or lose himself in work, he remembered the sight of his newborn son in Sophia's arms. Every time Sophia felt too angry to continue, she looked at Matteo's innocent eyes and wondered if it was worth giving Jonathan a chance to prove he could be a good father. As Alicia's legal threats continued, Jonathan's reputation took a hit, and his company's stock wavered. Yet, ironically, this challenge forced him to focus on what truly mattered: protecting his family, not just his business. In a twist he never would have anticipated, the adversity humbled him. For the first time in years, he found himself thinking less about the next big deal and more about how to rebuild trust with the wife he had betrayed. 3 months had passed since Matteo's birth. One evening, after putting the baby to sleep, Sophia retreated to the balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wet pavement. She leaned against the railing, letting her mind wander over all that had happened: the deception, the heartbreak, the lonely labor. She didn't hear Jonathan approach until he draped a soft blanket over her shoulders. "You'll catch a chill," he said quietly. She turned to face him, noticing the deep lines etched around his eyes. He looked older, as though the last few months had aged him more than the last few years combined. "Thank you," she murmured, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. They stood in silence for a moment, gazing at the distant skyline lit by shimmering lights. Jonathan spoke first. "I know I've caused you immense pain," he said, voice laced with regret. "I'm committed to being a better partner, a better father. I don't expect you to forget or forgive overnight, but I hope you can see I'm trying." Sophia's chest tightened. She recalled the warmth of their early love, the excitement in his voice when he talked about building a life with her. She also remembered the bitter disappointment of laboring alone. After a moment, she nodded softly. "I see that you're trying, Jonathan, and I appreciate it." It was just one line, but it carried more weight than 1,000 apologies. For the first time in a long while, Sophia felt a fragile seed of hope taking root in her heart. In the subsequent weeks, life took on a delicate balance between healing and guardedness. Alicia's lawsuits fizzled out after Jonathan's attorneys discovered discrepancies in her claims, suggesting she had leveraged her personal relationship with him to push unethical business practices. Public opinion shifted somewhat in Jonathan's favor, though many still wondered about the rumors that had swirled around him. Sophia, meanwhile, continued attending therapy with Jonathan. They spent time together as a family, taking Matteo for walks in the park, snapping photos of his first smiles, and celebrating the small milestones that come with early parenthood. Each day brought new challenges, from sleepless nights to the lingering spectre of betrayal. There were times when Sophia caught herself doubting. Late at night, she would wake up and see Jonathan sleeping beside her, and a wave of gratitude would wash over her. Yet the memory of Alicia's perfume and those damning photographs hovered in the back of her mind. Rebuilding trust was not a linear path. It required consistent effort, transparency, and vulnerability from them both. Jonathan's business slowly stabilized, thanks to careful negotiations and his willingness to accept partial losses. The empire he had once been so fixated on expanding now took a back seat to nurturing his familial bonds. In the end, success meant little without Sophia and Matteo by his side. A year from the day Sophia had gone into labor alone, they found themselves stronger, scarred, but still standing. Whether their marriage would fully mend remained unknown, but they had chosen to venture forward, hand in hand, determined to carve out a future free from shadows of the past. Months turned into a year and a half, and Matteo grew into a boisterous toddler, filling the penthouse with laughter. Jonathan's heart softened with fatherhood. Each night, as he read bedtime stories to Matteo, he marveled at how close he had come to losing this precious bond. His focus shifted permanently from building a bigger empire to safeguarding the one he already had. Sophia, too, underwent her own metamorphosis. She found her voice no longer the timid wife who ignored red flags for the sake of peace. She enrolled in an online business course, determined to establish her own career path. If she stayed with Jonathan, she wanted it to be out of love, not dependency. Although scars remained, the couple found themselves growing closer. They openly discussed their feelings, and whenever old wounds resurfaced, they revisited them in therapy. It was not a fairy tale ending. Rather, it was a messy human journey toward forgiveness and acceptance. Jonathan proved himself by maintaining firm boundaries, distancing himself from opportunistic ventures, and prioritizing honesty above all else. In time, Alicia Moretti became a footnote in their story, a stark reminder of greed, betrayal, and how fragile trust can be. Friends and colleagues whispered that the Delgado marriage was stronger than ever, while others cynically predicted another downfall. But Jonathan and Sophia paid them no mind. They had faced their darkest hour and still chose to fight for each other. On a warm afternoon, as Matteo napped peacefully in his crib, Jonathan found Sophia in the nursery. He knelt before her, tears glistening in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving us another chance. I'll never forget what you went through alone in the hospital, bringing Matteo into this world by yourself. I can't erase that pain, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life proving my love." Sophia cupped his face, sadness and hope mingling in her gaze. "I love you, Jonathan," she replied softly. "Just don't ever make me regret my choice." Thank you for joining us on this turbulent emotional journey where love, betrayal, ambition, and forgiveness clashed in the crucible of real-life drama. From Sophia's heart-wrenching loneliness in the labor room to Jonathan's desperate awakening as a father and husband, this story is a reminder that even the strongest promises can shatter under the weight of deception. Yet, it also shows us that from the rubble of heartbreak, there can rise a second chance if both parties are willing to fight for it. If you've been moved by Sophia and Jonathan's story of heartbreak, resilience, and renewed commitment, please consider supporting this channel. Like this video, share it with someone who might need a little hope, and subscribe to stay updated on more gripping tales of real-life drama. Together, we can explore the power of love and redemption in even the darkest times. Thank you for watching.